Hello, and welcome to this overview of new releases that I read that were published in April of 2024. I'm Olivia, your favorite resource for book recommendations you can easily screenshot, and you're watching Random Olive Reads. It's Raining Rakes in April by Annabelle Anders is book 4 of the Rake Review series. Henry has returned to England to take his rightful place as Duke, but he's walking around town as a regular guy until the paperwork is settled, just in case his cousin contests the claim. In doing so, he observes Julia trying and failing to catch his cousin's attention and being a total dunce at flirting. Julia is the oldest of 7 sisters and is encouraged to make an advantageous match to position her sisters better for the future. Her aunt discourages her from spending time with Henry since he's rumored to be a rake and he seemingly has no financial prospects. However, Julia is still atrocious at flirting and needs some help, so she enlists Henry for some lessons. And in this process, he decides to keep her for himself, especially since she likes him for who he really is and not because of his title or money. Falling for the Marquist by Alexa Aston is book 3 of the Strongs of Shadowcross series. We start with August's story as he's injured at war and then sent home, finding that his father died and his brother is on his deathbed, and leaving him the newly inherited Marquis. He's pretty frightened of his own physical scars and his new responsibilities, but he ends up making his brother a deathbed promise to get married next season in Sire and Air. Meanwhile, Georgina is the daughter and sister of a duke getting ready for her debut into society with her sister and 2 cousins, and hoping to hold out for a love match like she has seen her twin sister and older brother achieve. She has a chance meeting with August in a bookstore and instantly feels a connection to him and boldly introduces herself and invites him to tea with her family. She's even more glad to find out that he's their neighbor and that their 2 homes share a garden. He's hesitant at the attention, believing himself to look like a monster, but she's certainly charming and assertive. We find that the Strongs are a supportive family and show their approval of August quite publicly. He just needs to get over his own insecurity if he wants to build a life with Georgina. The Madness of Miss Grey by Julia Bennett is book 1 of the Harcastle Inheritance series. Will is the new psychiatric doctor at an insane asylum, which happens to be located within the manor where he grew up as the housekeeper's son. The old owner of the manor had passed away, and his heir had sold the house to the doctor who runs the asylum. One of the patients, Helen, is considered to be a difficult case and has a habit of trying to either run away or gain assistance by seducing other doctors. Will is wary of Helen's manipulations, but he doesn't actually believe that she's insane. As they spend more time together, Will decides that he needs to help her escape the asylum, even though he's kind of not sure whether he's being manipulated. This book was fascinating to read and kept me hooked the whole way through. Because the Baron Broods by Darcy Burke is book 2 of the Rogue Rules series. Grumpy Baron Isaac meets sunshine cousin of a Viscount Tamsin on the annual trip to a seaside town. They're total opposites, but still drawn to each other, and no one in their friend circle seems to understand the connection. Isaac is mostly grumpy and serious because a youthful indiscretion left him feeling guilty and ashamed of his actions. Tamsin is just trying to stay happy and optimistic despite her aloof father and a mother who abandoned their family. They somehow end up getting engaged because a busybody lady catches him defending her from an over persistent suitor. And then they go through with the arrangement, even though Isaac insists on keeping his emotional distance from Tamsin. It takes a lot of persistence and patience and kindness on Tamsin's part to get Isaac to open up to her and to the possibility of happiness. Here We Go Again by Allison Cochran is a standalone contemporary romance. Logan and Rosemary were best friends as tweens, enemies as teens, and didn't see each other for a decade, and now enemy coworkers teaching at the same high school they attended. They're also complete opposites in personality and demeanor and are constantly antagonizing each other. They're also both completely dedicated to their former teacher and mentor, Joe, who's dying of cancer. When Joe wants both girls to drive him across the country so that he can die in his remote cottage, they think it's a terrible idea, but then give in because they want to honor Joe's wishes. And it's pretty much an awful road trip with arguing and detours and dodgy accommodations. But through this trip, everyone gets to deal with all of their past regrets and inner demons and actually communicate with each other. And while the death trip is sad and full of grief, we do get to see Logan and Rosemary reconcile and begin to understand each other better. This book was funny and heartbreaking and so very good to read. What is Love by Jen Comfort is another standalone contemporary romance novel. Maxine and Teddy are total opposites in terms of personality and temperament and somehow end up rivals on a popular trivia question game show. We get to see them get under each other's skin a few times before teaming up to study together to prepare for a final tournament against a common rival. Of course, with their very different study styles, super regimented for Teddy and non existent for Maxine, they spend most of their time arguing and then trying not to sleep with each other until they realize that those carnal acts make great study motivators. This book was super funny and steamy and highly entertaining. The Lady Plays with Fire by Susanna Craig is book two of the Goods Guide to Misconduct series. One of our secret columnists, Julia, has made an enemy of a certain playwright for her scathing review of one of his plays. That playwright is a pseudonym of grumpy Scottish Earl Graham, who prefers solitude and sarcasm. On a chance meeting at the theater, Graham and Julia meet face to face without knowing that the other person is their secret rival. However, they continue to run into each other in London, and then Julia is trying to find out more information to possibly influence a play that Graham is a patron of. It's kind of messy to follow, but things heat up once they realize their attraction for each other, and Graham opens up about his history. While this book felt like a slow start for me, I enjoyed seeing these two get together and then how the final drama was resolved. The Lady He Lost by Faye Delacour is book one of the Lucky Ladies of London series. Naval Lieutenant Eli is back from the dead after being shipwrecked and captured by pirates to find that he has no money, no fiance, and might be questioned by his bosses about his time away from the Navy. His former friend Jane is being cold and he doesn't quite know why, but he wants to regain her friendship and affection. Well, we find out that Eli and Jane had a strong friendship up until the point where Eli gets caught in a compromising position with Jane's prettier and more sociable cousin Cecily and then gets engaged to that woman. Stuck doing the honorable thing and staying engaged to a woman he doesn't like very much, he runs off and joins the Navy. It's basically a cluster of immaturity for Eli there. Meanwhile, Jane is trying to run a discreet gambling hell for ladies and gain her own financial independence. Due to the meddling of too many of Jane's family members, she and Eli end up at the same house party attending the horse races at Ascot and sort of maybe start a physical affair. But both Jane and Eli are dodgy about their feelings, leaving the other person totally unsure and insecure. This is one of those books where I'm just waiting for the characters to just finally talk to each other already. However, it was fun to read about Jane's adventures in gambling and Eli's unwavering support. Make Mine a Marquist by Tina Gabrielle is book three of the Daring Ladies series. The newly returned Marquess of Landon is out for revenge against his cousin, who seems to have orchestrated the shipwreck that left him for dead 5 years ago. The gross cousin spends money recklessly and is draining the estate's funds while also neglecting the tenants and estate repairs. Landon hopes to find evidence of his cousin's guilt while also seducing the man's fiancée to add further injury. Phoebe is mostly the innocent victim here, but she was apathetic enough to get engaged to that villain because she wanted to avoid any type of desire or passion. Except all of those repressed feelings flare back to life when she meets Landon and she is attracted to him. She tries and fails to stay away from him and sees that he's pretty much an upstanding guy for the most part, except she does not know that she's being used for revenge. This was your fairly typical revenge love story, and it'll take a bit of groveling on Landon's part to get the girl. Wake Me Most Wickedly by Felicia Grossman is book 2 of the Once Upon the East End series. This one is a Snow White retelling where Solomon Weiss is the innocent dandy who needs rescuing. He's trying his absolute darndest to help his older brother achieve his ambitions while also working at a new job with prominent Jewish families in town and also flirting with a rogue of a woman who saved him from being robbed. The infamous Hannah runs a pawn shop and is also an informant for hire to the thugs of the night. Despite her unsuitability for Saul, he pursues her anyway because he can't seem to get her out of his mind. She's determined to keep Saul safely away from her because her reputation will ruin his, but he's an incorrigible flirt and succeeds in at least seducing her into a physical relationship. Things take a dangerous turn for Saul, though, when he gets chased into the night in what feels like more than just an ordinary robbery. While we have initial suspicions of who the villain could be, it's still a huge letdown for the ever loyal Saul. Earl's Trip by Jenny Holiday is a standalone romance, but it looks like it'll lead into a potential sequel. This one is a relatively low drama, low angst, childhood friends to lovers story. Archie is on his way to his annual guys trip with his two best friends, but is detoured when he needs to rescue family friends Clementine and Olive from a rogue. Olive is the younger sister who Archie only has brotherly feelings for. Meanwhile, the outspoken and outdoorsy Clementine is someone that Archie obliviously takes all book to realize that he's in love with. We get to see these two rekindle their friendship, which drifted apart as they got older, as well as see this bigger friend group form a connection. While Clementine has vehemently expressed her desire to never marry, it also takes her all book to realize that Archie would be a different kind of husband and that she would get to be true to herself when she's with him. This was a quiet, slow burn type of romance, which I really enjoyed. A Touch Wicked by Katrina Kendrick is book point 5 of the Private Arrangements series. Emma is looking for her sister who disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and now she's working as a lady's maid to a stuffy Earl's sister in order to support herself. James is the stuffy Earl who is pretty much instantly attracted to Emma and totally distracted by her, even though he says he's looking for a proper society wife to keep his rebellious sister in line. James and Emma run into each other at a masquerade where he's trying to put the maid out of his mind and she's trying to find clues about her sister's whereabouts. Although James does not recognize Emma, she definitely recognizes him and tries to stay away, except for that whole instant attraction business. And they soon start a masked affair. It's going to be a huge mess when he finds out the truth, but the mystery of Emma's missing sister is also super intriguing to read about. How to End a Love Story by Yulin Kwang is a standalone contemporary romance. We get right to the tragic root of the problem here at chapter 1 at Helen's younger sister's funeral. Turns out Helen's 16-year-old sister jumped in front of high school all-stars Grant's moving vehicle. Clearly not his fault, but still causing lots of grief and resentment for Helen and her family. Fast forward 13 years, and Helen's book series is being adapted for television. Grant is a fairly talented screenwriter who is tapped for the job, and these two meet again as coworkers. It's awful and awkward and tragic, and they somewhat come to a truce and then somehow become entangled in a physical relationship. But despite how much they actually like each other in the present day, and a real relationship isn't possible with all of the animosity that Helen's parents have towards Grant. And Helen's the one enforcing the boundaries of their pre planned expiration date. There's all sorts of emotional angst and bonding here with their shared past experiences and their compatibility in the present. Add a splash of overbearing immigrant parents, and we have the perfect scenario for impossibilities. My Season of a Scandal by Julianne Long is book 7 of the Palace of Rogues series. Catherine is the daughter of a country doctor in London to find a husband and has an optimistic outlook for the season while staying at the Grand Palace on the Thames. While it seems unlikely that she'll get along with the grumpy Dominic while he's also staying at the boarding house, he admires her cleverness and wit when they converse in secret alcoves at various balls. He's got a sordid history and a scandalous reputation, despite his well spokenness at Parliament defending the rights of young laborers. He's grumpy and jaded and definitely too old for Catherine, but he can't help being drawn to her. Despite his own reservations, he continually finds ways to protect and care for Catherine, and his ultimate grand gesture is one for the ages in this one. A Simple Seduction by Jana McGregor is book one of the Millionaires of Mayfair series. Honoria is the sister of a duke who hides out in the country and avoids society because her father had cast her out as a child and believed that she was not his child. She plans to attend a masquerade for a one-night tryst before she claims her spinster status for good. And she does meet a charming and delightful man named Marquist who's attractive and makes her feel desired and safe. The problem is that he's really an earl and her brother's best friend. Things get complicated when they find out their true identities and get caught because Honoria is adamant that she cannot marry Marcus. Turns out the old duke had arranged for a letter claiming Honoria's status as illegitimate to be revealed if she ever gets married. So Honoria is trying to keep her siblings' reputations intact. Despite her hesitance, Marcus continues to try to prove that he really cares for her. This was a fun series starter, and I'm excited to read more about the rest of the family. The Wrath of the Marquis by Barbara Russell is book 3 of the Victorian Outcast series. Cora and Ethan have a chance meeting when they're caught together in an earthquake, but she's married to an abusive husband and he's on his way out of the country to fight pirates on behalf of the crown. 4 years later, they meet again, and Cora is still stuck being married to a horrible, terrible, no good, abusive Earl, even though she's planning to run away with her teenage son whenever she saves up enough money. Meanwhile, Ethan has inherited the title of Marquis, and he's back as a scarred war hero and running a home for injured veterans. It's a slow-moving romance here as they meet again, become friends, and then fall in love under challenging circumstances. I appreciated how kind and protective Ethan was to Cora's son and how they become a tight-knit family unit throughout this book. Cora's husband is the true villain of the story here, and the book kept me reading just to see how they finally be free of him. The Stranger I Wed by Harper St. George is book 1 of the Doves of New York series. Cora and her sisters are the illegitimate daughters of a wealthy gentleman in New York who is dangling their inheritance from their grandmother in the form of dowries. In order to acquire the money, Cora needs to marry a suitable gentleman, but not one in New York. They all try to find matches in England where they've hidden the fact that they're illegitimate and give the appearance of being wealthy heiresses. Leo is an impoverished earl, finally deciding to marry for money, and comes to an arrangement with Cora. She's adamant that they separate eventually and tries very hard not to get emotionally entangled. And Leo is just trying to keep his own heart from being broken, as it has been before. However, these two are actually the perfect match for each other in terms of political aspirations and advocacy, plus that simmering attraction. While both of these people are so concerned about protecting themselves, they're missing out on the happiness they could be having with the person right in front of them. This was a really great introduction to the series, and I'm looking forward to reading more. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you found a book or two to add to your TBR. Links to all of these books are in the description box. Like and subscribe to get updates, and you can follow me on Instagram at randomolive.